Okay, so keep in mind they fume me to try to make it so I seem like something that I am not, which is bipolar. And they do other stuff like change my voice to try to make it so I sound crazy or gay or manic, what have you. The fumes actually change my speech patterns, my thinking patterns to some degree, but it's not the same as bipolar disorder, not bipolar 1, not bipolar 2. It used to be called manic depressive. I know quite a bit about it, and I've studied mental health and human behavior quite a bit. Okay, so let me back up a little bit in the story here. Well, like the third or fourth time I saw her, she had a boyfriend who looked like Weasel from The Devil and Daniel Mouse. It was weird. His name was Billy. He was a weirdo in terms of how he looked. He looked like a weird weasel. And it's a common kind of occult look these days. And later on, I seen, so some of my older brother's friends were friends with some other guy that maybe she married or something. That, maybe they told him to say that to me. I don't know, because they lived where she lived in San Jose. I'm not gonna tell you where that is. I don't think it matters. I never figured out where exact house was. I wouldn't have gone there if I did. I'm not a fucking stalker. That's some weirdo stuff. I'm a grown man, and there's several parts of this story that are key. So when I was with this Indian female named Janu, I told her the story, and she also tried to call her and said she was acting weird with her as well. So I went as far as to, because I was with this person, I broke up with them several times, and we were kind of on and off in a relationship. And she said, I want you to be happy. What's bothering you? One thing led to another. My ex-girlfriend was the type of person who could make anyone warm up to her and play anything off, what have you. But it didn't work because Maria was so unreasonable. And to make a long story short, her dad ended up calling the house, my house, and speaking to my father. And he actually says, he wanted me to, he told me he wanted me to get on the phone, so I got on the phone. He starts saying a bunch of jackal nonsense, don't call his house anymore. And I had no intention to call his house anymore, so I was kind of taken off guard by that. I'm like, I'm not going to call it out. Now, last time I said, that's it, and even though I knew that they didn't know that, I was a little bit confused by that initially. Because I'm like, what the hell? He said as if he knew for sure I was going to call. Anyway, I quickly got to my senses after that and started wrapping my mind around the phone call. And he starts talking crazy, really. He says, do you know how old she is? And then keep in mind, she was pretty developed for a 16-year-old, what have you. He's like, if you knew how old she was, you wouldn't like her. And so he starts saying weird things like that. And then he says, can you guess what race she is? Now, the government workers tell me that probably was actually her father and not some kind of psychological operations person, but I don't know. They tell me things sometimes. They have a covert way of communicating to me. And, so he seemed like, it's almost like he was a psychologist. He was very kind of deliberate, very calculating, but yet saying stupid things, right? And later on, when I see her picture on Facebook, there's what looks like a bigger guy. I pictured him as like a small Jewish-looking guy, but I seen a bigger guy on her Facebook, and it might have been a fake Facebook profile of hers. So I'll go ahead and take back what I said earlier about calling her the B word. I mean, I was just my initial reaction. I'm gonna leave that there because it's an authentic reaction, authentic response. But they did funny stuff where they were using other females that looked somewhat like her, but like a Jewish version of her. That looked similar to her, that they would come around. I seen one in San Francisco, actually two. One in San Francisco. One of them was in Morgan Hill. I think one in Santa Cruz, or at least people somewhat comparable to her. And, it was interesting when I came across one in Morgan Hill. I'm at Centennial Park. I'm driving through the parking lot there. There's this female with her kid. And the kid runs out, what have you, and I'm playing my music loud, I'm acting tough, got my shirt off, got some fresh tattoos, what have you. And she says something out loud, I don't remember what it was, and they use that to kind of try to put thoughts into my mind, if you will. Not in some kind of crazy schizophrenic way, because again, I look into mental health very much, and I make sure I see the distinction there. I look at things very carefully. I look at the description of schizophrenia. For example, you have to have several of the symptoms at least, right? Disorganized thinking, right? Negative behavior, delusions, Okay, I don't have any of those things. You have to have several of them. Okay, I don't have any of them. And keep in mind, disorganized thinking is high level of disorganized thoughts. Like somebody's saying giraffe, and then I was at the bus stop, and then like it's extremely disorganized. Not anything. Even when I'm fumed, you don't see that coming out in my videos. And so it is with disorganized behaviors. Schizophrenics have a very high, it's the most severe mental illness, very high level of disorganized behavior. And negative symptoms is when someone sits around and stares at a wall. I don't do that. I work every day. Historically, okay, I also, make the videos, do the research for the videos. I do a lot of stuff every day, even still. So that wasn't that. So I knew that, based on the witnesses, based on my sense of reality, based on my martial art challenge, which takes a higher sense of reality to beat everybody, I knew that I'm right. And also their failure to present viable and logical counter arguments to my videos. So anyway, that occurred with her dad actually calling and saying those things. He also said something that was very bogus. He said, you're one of those spoiled brats that always gets what they want. And that was not the case. Lived in the middle of nowhere, wasn't driving till I was 19, didn't get a brand new Mercedes or something like a lot of doctors' children's did, and both my parents are doctors. I was driving, my parents gave me their old Infiniti that had quite a few miles on it by the time it found its way to me, but it looked like a nice car, so on and so forth. That was after that. I mean, she was driving at the time, but I wasn't, but yet he was calling me spoiled. Okay, I mean, it was stupid, right? He was way off. So he read the situation wrong, read me wrong. Here he is telling Jesus to not date his daughter, and I've gone ahead and chastised him for that in various videos. And I don't respect that, Earlier I said I somewhat respect her mother or somewhere. I respect her. I don't entirely respect her because she married that guy and she raised her daughter to reject Jesus. But she did seem like a nice and reasonable person, And I think that I have a memory of her trying to reason with her husband. She knew that it was stupid for him to overreact like that. That when somebody feels like they're in love with your daughter, hey, let him make his pitch, right? And she talked to me for a while, and she heard, and she knew that I was like a well-raised person, a heartfelt person, okay? And so, I remember when I called her, she was doing the dishes, right, while she was talking to me. Anyway, so that's that, okay? There's not much more to the story than that. There's little things like the song Maria Maria, where they're doing capoeira. My older brother did capoeira, and when that song came out, he was doing capoeira at the time. I was doing kung fu and taekwondo around that time, and I became a martial arts grand champion, taekwondo grand champion at that time through a tournament, and so that song hit differently, right? And of course, eventually, 4 years after that occurred, I got evicted from the apartments in South San Jose, a different part of South San Jose. She lived in the Burnell area, where when I had my apartments, I lived with my girlfriend at the time by Oak Ridge, the Oak Ridge area, okay, Pearl and Chinwith, which goes back to another connection I forgot to put in this last video, the last two videos ago, where I was making the video about the connections, trying to sum up what I've been saying so far, because I'd upload these videos from the middle of nowhere, and they hack my Wi-Fi, my internet, what have you. So I have to go out down the road to a service spot. And, I made the decision to go ahead and explain that, even though people might assassinate me or whatever. I'm not worried about it, I'm the top martial artist ever possible, very resourceful, very capable of improvising, defending myself, even though I'm partially crippled these days, but I'm still the best martial artist there ever was. And I can still beat anybody being allowed to recover, right? It's the coordination is more the concern than all these years I haven't been doing martial arts, because I'm so much smarter than other people. I'm so much more of a man, so much more intense, what have you. Just have a better feel for martial arts. I'm a natural and a supernatural, if you will. All praises to the Lord. So I felt that because of Marissa, right? Her name is Maria Scrambled, and Mello Buckz, around the same time. there was that rap after party that was shot up in Chicago, and then there was the mass shooting in Indiana, which was on Washington Street, and Illinois, which connects to me saying that it's the government behind it, hacking people's brains, and the Illinois in Chicago. Now, I'm sure you don't think that I'm ordering all these things to happen. I'm under 24-hour surveillance, and if you look at how these news reporters write their names, connect to it as well, so you can see that that's something that the government is doing that I don't have a part in. And I've been telling people to rally to me forever and ever. Okay, I predicted they would, but I didn't know for sure if they would or not. It was an educated prediction, not some kind of gypsy prediction. I don't believe in that stuff. Okay, the people do that stuff in secret societies, and they manipulate things behind the scenes. It's magic trick nonsense, right? A prophet is somebody who has a divine insight into things because they live in reality, in the divine order, and they're able to kind of masterfully put things together, but they don't know everything. They don't get dreams that tell them what's going to happen. All that is just, stuff that they put in the Bible to confuse things because they didn't want to admit the Royal African Falcon Martial Art Order. The Bible is Bible, right? Torah is Harat, scrambled. Talmud is Talmud, Talmud, scrambled, insulting black people, Egyptians, what have you, Cushites. Okay, Kabbalah, right? A cabal, right? Like a cabal of thieves, okay? And Kabul and Kabal, right? Kabbalah, right? Kabal. Another word for Baal is Bel. And Bel is Set's counterpart, Zeus's counterpart, Jupiter's counterpart. And it's pretty straightforward when you look at this thing. Also, Jupiter, a young Dionysus, a Dionysus is a young Zeus. And again, he's a deity of theater arts, ritual madness. You should see the videos I made on Dionysus, very great videos. I went into depth with it. I did quite a bit of research into it. There's a lot of information about Dionysus out there. You got to keep digging, keep reading. Some of this stuff is in the Iliad and the Odyssey. The Iliad, right? The Il-I-ad, right? Going back to your vision, your point of view, your perspective. Well, I went way over time, so let me just wrap it up here. That's the story of Maria Mello. It took me a while to get over it, maybe about 10 years. And when I met my ex-fiance when I was in my 20s, okay, actually that's about when I got over it. So I was 16, so it took about 8 years or so when I was like 24 or so when I met my ex-fiance, and I was blown away by her. I didn't think that she looked like Maria to some degree when I saw her. And I'm going to go ahead and put that picture on the screen. They edited the hell out of it. They edited all my pictures. They have accessed my house for more than one reason. My parents helped them do that. And they've changed the pictures out. They've changed everything there. They go the distance to create a certain image of things. That's why you see all these old videos and all these songs that are remastered. You go to YouTube, you play an old song that's been posted there for like 14 years, and it sounds different now because they violated the user's confidence, and they just change things behind the scenes. And if anyone complains, they persecute them. Everyone knows that right now. In the future, they might be confused. They might, hack everyone's brain en masse. I don't know. They might, people might forget. But right now, people know that they've remastered songs. They've changed the way Tupac looks in the pictures and videos on YouTube. They've changed the way that Martin Luther King looks. You see people like Hakeem Jeffries, he says some important stuff. Some things are he's a politician, just a politician, but they put red on his lips, and they put red on Pac's lips, and so on and so forth. And they do the same thing with my pictures, and it's very sacrilegious, very petty. It's, when people talk about Jewish replacement theory, there's some truth to it. It's whites, Jews, and LGBT people doing it. English Jews, German Jews, very much involved, very much. The Vatican's very much involved. All the churches, mosques, synagogues, all the religious centers, like cultural control centers. The New Age movement, every movement you can think of is involved. Think about social controllers. Think cult and cultivation and culture. So I was really saddened by the Marissa case, and I want the family also to know about my region argument and how far I went to try to reason with the governing class to prevent things like this from happening. Things like her unfortunate passing. So the region argument basically goes like this, there's people who are very jealous of me. There's people who are white supremacists who they're blinded by their hate. They don't understand what causes their hate. Part of it is jealousy. Part of it is an inferiority complex, insecurity, what have you. People have problems, okay? So it might sound like I'm making fun of them in this video, but I'm not. I'm just saying the facts here. So for people who can't live with me, right, they'd be in a different region. The government should allocate money for a region. I'd live in that region. I've been willing to take in all the homeless in the country into that region, build them tiny homes, small homes, apartments, what have you. build various rehabs there with vice taxes and luxury taxes. And the government would spend maybe initially $100 billion building the region, right? Roads, housing, what have you. Various corporations would move in, various food chains, what have you. And they would, cater to the population, and it would develop pretty rapidly. Okay. And in that region, there'd be different races, even different religions, what have you. Eventually, a lot of people, I'd imagine, would be smart enough to follow me, so I would have some kind of representation or maybe a sub-region in that region. Okay. See, I have no problem living around different types of people. I lived in California basically all my life. The elite, a lot of them come from, they come from Europe, they come from modern Israel, they come from the South. When you look at the migrations, the history of America, California wasn't the first state or something. These people came from somewhere else. So a lot of people here have strong ties with the Ku Klux Klan, a lot more than people think, in groups like that, right? The Freemasons who came from the South, who are more white supremacist types historically, very, into their cultures, a lot of false pride. Some of them don't see themselves as so racist. All of them have accepted the boundaries of Luciferian. It's not just Albert Pike's book, Morals and Dogma, that gives it away. There's a lot of stuff that gives it away. And there's a lot of misinformation out there about Freemasons. And you got to really do a lot of research. I have. And I'm satisfied that they're Luciferians. I want to make this video very brief. Never forget that part of the reason why your daughter died is because these people did not want to discuss things with me like an adult. I even offered, the use of intermediaries. They could find people who are very easy to talk to, who serve as go-betweens. Okay, we could form a council to talk to each other. And on that council, there'd be all kinds of people with different sexual orientations, whatever. Okay, to really make it so they're comfortable, and we could kind of see if we can come to some kind of understanding, right? There's people from their side who said that the answer was to work around me. They ignored them. Okay, for mere human rules, customs, traditions, satanic rituals, they ignored everybody. And it's not too late for them to scramble to try to mitigate. But after my flesh dies, right, nobody will be able to connect to heaven. There's nothing I could do about that. There's nothing anyone could do about that. That was God's design. That was God's command. And I uphold God's commands. That's the main thing I do. Within reason, I can act as an intermediary between God and man. But God is greater than everybody. Unlike what people say all the time when they say that Christ is God. Christos means the anointed one. I'm anointed by God. You see in the Bible where Christ is a character in the story, flat out at one point says, the Father is greater than I am. The Father is greater. And with the Father giving the orders and being the source, through me, his blessings can come. And they should be glad that I'm going to the Father, is what it was saying at that point in the story. But this is about the region argument, big time, big time. They rejected, treated me fairly. The word blessed is a play on words for be less. They insisted that that I should magically be less, which is wrong. I have to put a lamp on a stand, like the Bible says, so it gives light to everybody. I have to be honest about things, and I have to be honest about the fact that I'm Christ. They couldn't, they couldn't refrain themselves from persecuting me and targeting me and fuming me and poisoning me. They couldn't hold back. Out of weakness, out of a lack of discipline. This is why God chose me, right? The most disciplined, the most determined to be right. You see, everyone else just, espousing nonsense, propagating despicable falsehoods. They keep saying things that aren't true. Some will look more professional than others. Some are nicer than others, but they're lying about God. Some come closer than others, but they're lying. I am the way. Okay? Even in Paul's letters in the Bible, he made an order for his church. Even after Christ is gone, and the disciples have split up in the story in the book of Acts, Paul made an order for his church. The message is not white supremacy. Hebrew is an Afro-Asiatic language, not a European language. Okay? The message is not Semitic supremacy, right? Galatians 3:28. Proverbs 17, right? A prudent servant will rule over a disgraceful son. The parable of the tenant. The kingdom of heaven will be taken away from people who think that flesh makes them chosen. It is the Spirit. The message is not racial supremacy. The message is not LGBT friendly. Okay? One has to give up things of this world like being gay in order to get to heaven. And they have to obey God through me. These people, because they're white supremacists, Jewish supremacists, and LGBT supremacists playing a sick game, killed your daughter and hacked that gentleman's brain who killed her. And I know that some of you are mad at that person and some of you are struggling with forgiveness. I'm not saying to forgive him or not to forgive him, but I am saying that you should look at the situation and consider that he had his brain hacked, he's disenfranchised, but at the same time, he refused to cultivate a disciplined lifestyle. So that when it came down to it, his brain was not prepared for the situation, and he made a mistake that if he had cultivated a disciplined lifestyle, he wouldn't have made. You have to consider all these things and judge correctly. And first, obey God through me and remove the log from your own eye. Then you will see clearly to remove the log from your brother's eye. Thank you.